You know, I've had sort of a love-hate relationship with Digital Foundry for many years. They do decent work, but I always felt like they were kind of maybe a little bit unfair where Xbox One was concerned, especially early in the generation. A lot of people were giving Xbox games a lot of heat for being, 900p or, 878p or whatever it was. And I always thought that the whole argument for P's or resolution, as it were, was kind of foolish, and I still think that. So, I do like graphics, but graphics and, of course, the resolution are completely different things, and so I always kind of fought that and was like, that stuff doesn't really matter to me, and it still doesn't. But if you do want a technical analysis or whatever of what a game does or something impressive, there's still the de facto people to go check out for that kind of stuff. And so this should be a very interesting video because they've actually revealed some awesome stuff about the PlayStation 5. What's up, everybody? Crapgamer here with Crapgamer Reviews, back with another video. Please like, share, subscribe, hit that bell so you're notified of everything as soon as it drops. I would definitely appreciate it, and I know, you guys are pretty awesome, and I definitely thank you for, rocking out with me all the time. So, this comes off of the Eurogamer Digital Foundry deal. Again, this was pretty cool because what we saw from the PlayStation event was, a pretty good showing. And, it had ups and downs and ups, and was basically kind of how their E3s tended to go, where they'd start off with a bang, and then, you'd get to the indie sizzle reels and kind of, want to go take a break to go get something to eat and drink, and then you'd come back, and then they'd hit you with a bunch of exclusives. It was sort of like that to me, and apparently this isn't their only show. It was only their first showing, and then they're going to wait for Microsoft to come back and do a show. It's going to be a whole thing. So I like that chess match that we see between Microsoft and Sony. But according to Digital Foundry, this is what they had to say about Ratchet & Clank in particular, which really, really pushes the narrative that the PlayStation 5 is a lot more than people thought. It says, the highlight of the event, Ratchet & Clank on PlayStation 5. A closer look at the trailer asset reveals a native 4K resolution and a basic density of detail far beyond its already impressive PS4 and PS4 Pro predecessors. Indeed, there is actually a good argument that what we're seeing here is significantly beyond the fidelity of the Ratchet & Clank CGI movie. It's a breathtaking example of art, technology, and imagination coming together to produce something that looks simply fantastic. They go on to say that from a technological perspective, perhaps the real breakthrough in the game's dimensional rift mechanic, which sees Ratchet & Clank teleporting nigh on instantly through very different domains as full fidelity, with no sign of streaming issues or pop-in. A validation perhaps for Sony's super specified solid-state storage solution, capable of streaming up to 5.5 gigabytes of data. Interestingly, the slight hitches are noticeable, something we'd expect to see Insomniac clear up by launch, but also adding further to the authenticity of what was delivered. It's a work-in-progress code after all. And yes, we also saw judicious use of real-time hardware accelerated ray tracing. Again, so I'm going to stop it right there for a second. Hardware accelerated ray tracing can only be done on RDNA 2, even though you still have people calling what the PlayStation 5 has as RDNA Lite or RDNA 1.5. Again, AMD has already clarified this, so we have confirmation 100% that this is real-time hardware accelerated ray tracing, the kind of technological leap we could only envision in the most optimistic scenarios possible when we first started to ponder next-gen specs back in 2018, and yet there it is. In a game we expect to ship with the machine's launch, running at what the pixel count suggests is indeed full native 4K. No mean feat when ray tracing is involved. Developer Insomniac talked about ray tracing effects on Clank's chrome-like finish, but the game's lavish reflections work, particularly on the ground. They also lean into the hardware ray tracing capabilities. So once again, we have some really fantastic stuff here. They're saying this is stuff surpassing what they originally were talking about in 2018 already, and this is looking like it's going to be a launch game, and for them to be able to do that, I feel like really goes all out and tells you everything you need to know about what Sony is planning and what their whole deal is to begin with. I really love the fact that, they've been upfront about this, and they also show stuff out. Let's be real. I know a lot of you probably aren't on social media and Twitter and things like that, but at the same time, I am. And I see people kind of making fun of some of the little hitches that the game had right there, or the lights didn't light up down the tunnel or something in Gran Turismo 7, or there was a little bit of pop in there with the lighting. Again, they showed stuff running on the PlayStation 5 and pre-alpha stuff at that. So for there to be some issues, that's to be 100% expected, and not something that people should knock for them, actually. You know what I mean? This was one of the things that I disliked about some of the Digital Foundry stuff back in the day, and this isn't Digital Foundry's fault, but the people in general. I can remember when Doom was going to be shown off, and id Software decided not to show it off because they said they didn't want people running pixel counts and frame rate counts of something that was so early in development, even though they would have liked to shown it to the fans. This is the same type of situation. Sony was very aware that Microsoft got a lot of flack for not actually showing anything running on the Xbox Series X at that Inside Xbox in May. So they wanted to do the exact opposite. What does that mean? It means you're going to get some pre-alpha stuff. You're going to get some pop-in. You're going to get some of this stuff because it happens. It's not finished yet. You still have months and months. If you know anything about or have talked to anybody who does coding or a developer, they do a lot of the things to tighten up everything and to make these games ready to go in the last couple of months. So we're not exactly there yet. So it's going to be very interesting to see where all this stuff turns out to be when we do actually get to see it, because again, a lot of people were assuming that the PlayStation 5 wouldn't be able to do the hardware ray tracing, wouldn't be able to do this, wouldn't be able to do that, and now we're seeing completely opposite. And it's so awesome that we actually got a chance to see sort of Digital Foundry come out and say, hey, not only is this thing capable of doing hardware-based ray tracing, but it's also doing it at a higher level than we anticipated, and it's actually blowing our minds that it's able to do this basically with what we're going to be getting as a launch title. So again, a lot of people hate the fact that Sony are the ones that say, hey, you know, we're going to be doing exclusive games on PlayStation 5 that aren't going to be playable on the PlayStation 4, and they got a lot of hate for that as well. Again, I always notice the people that find fault in the things that Sony do never really find the fault in the stuff that Microsoft does, right? So I was kind of pointing at this earlier on Twitter. I said, do you really notice how the people love the options that Microsoft tell them they should like, right? Like if you bring up, you don't have to buy a new Xbox Series X to enjoy their latest first-party games. Options are great, but if you ever bring up, where's the option to use VR on PlayStation, or I mean on Xbox, they're quiet. Or where's the option not to have to pay for online to play free-to-play games, which only Microsoft does that. They're very quiet about that, okay? So they want to act like Microsoft is super consumer-friendly. I've always looked at it as the opposite. If I'm spending $500 for a new console, I want to make sure that that first-party stuff isn't being held back at all by the old stuff. And for them to be doing the level of ray tracing and all this kind of stuff and that hot hard drive, that exactly shows you why you should be able to get this stuff on the next-generation console. It's a reason to buy the next-generation console. Spider-Man, Ratchet & Clank, these games are reasons to buy the next generation of hardware, and I think that a lot of people don't really understand how that's actually consumer friendly to the people that are spending the money. You know, people have had 7+ years to spend with the current gen stuff, right? PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro, you've had that's been out since 2016. Xbox One S, Xbox One X, we've had years of this stuff, right? And so I think it's definitely time to move on. You know, we can move on. If you didn't get in till late, then you probably are only going to play, you know, you're casual. You might play Maddens and Fortnites, which are still going to be playable on the legacy hardware regardless. The hardcore, who are oddly enough championing this stuff the most, they're the ones that realistically, you know, the hardcore are the ones that bought an Xbox One at launch because it had stuff that wasn't on the 360. Killer Instinct, Rise, Dead Rising 3, you know, Sunset Overdrive, Quantum Break. You know, these games weren't available on the 360. If you bought a PS4, Infamous Second Son, Killzone Shadowfall, even though I'm not a fan of that game or whatever, these games weren't available on the PS3. They couldn't be done on the PS3. This is the way it's always been done with console generations, and I actually love seeing that. It gives you a good reason. Another thing is, it's heavily rumored that Resident Evil 8 was actually canceled on current gen hardware because they were having so many problems with it, while on the PS5 version, apparently there's 0 load screens. There's no load times, and apparently on the old hardware it was constantly having to load and things like that. That's the big difference. If it can't be done on the old hardware, then don't do it on the old hardware. You know, take full advantage of what the new stuff does. That's what I like to see, and it's incredible to see that Sony kind of gets that, and I love that Sony gets that. And for me personally, it's a big reason why I'm going to get a PlayStation 5 day one. Maybe an Xbox if they can give me reasons to get one. So far, that hasn't really happened, but I would love your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. What do you think about Digital Foundry going above and beyond with this? I think it sounds incredible. Would love your thoughts on it down below. Rack 'em up, game on, have a great day. Crapgamer out.
Unscripted.